everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's show, we're taking a trip up to Chattanooga, Tennessee for the National Model Railroad Association's annual convention. Now we're gonna see some model trains, we're gonna buy some too, and we're gonna track down some real life trains on the main lines out there. So let's get going north. Some days you can just tell how the next few days are going to be along the railroad as soon as you arrive trackside. For me, this feeling would hit just a couple hours after leaving the house in Tampa for Jacksonville, as a distant signal call out along CSX's S-line would catch my ear. I was near Campville, just north of Hawthorne, so I'd pull into a known spot, the old Seaboard Campville defect detector. It's always nice to catch a train here, considering this DD is one of the last Seaboard bungalows along the S-line, this one being just south of the S700 milepost. I knew my train was close when the automatic block signal to the north would show a red block ahead, so I'd get ready as M453 powers south.
453 engine, 74 there, got approach from
Under the overcast sky of this late July afternoon, 453 would come by, running a bit later than usual, but making quick time out of Baldwin. Freight for Miami and Okeechobee makes up the consist, with racks for Palm Center and Jupiter, the way it's been for years.
CSX Equipment Defect Detector, milepost 700.1. No defects. No defects. Total axle 420. End of transmission.
I'd pack up and continue north, but not by much, as the next sighting north would reveal another green signal and another distant train. This is Orange Heights, where a 10,273-foot sighting resides, and my photo spot for M603, following the 453 closely on a straight shot to Lakeland from Waycross.
I'd say M603.
With a couple of freshly painted GE wide cabs up front, 603 would roll by on his way to Winston Yard in Lakeland, normally a very long train for the greater Polk County area, today being no exception, 143 cars behind the two locos up front. I'd be on my way to Jacksonville to meet up with my friend Mr. Paul Nutza, as we'd carpool with his award-winning HO scale layout up to Chattanooga the following day. It would take most of the day to get there and set everything up, but we'd be up early the next morning as my buddy Andrew would drive up from the Atlanta area and start the weekend all together trackside on the west side of town. This is NS Train 289, a New Jersey to Rossville intermodal train that'll end up just outside of Memphis on the western side of Tennessee, across the Mississippi River from Arkansas. Although this shot out of context may look like a normal NS train on an NS main line, it's actually just adopted a CSX Z train ID, as down at CP Wauhatchie to our north, this train has entered CSX trackage to Stevenson, Alabama, where NS trackage begins again. Chattanooga is a maze of tracks, but it's easy to understand from above or from a map and local rail fan like Andrew. There are two Class 1 railroads in Chattanooga, CSX and Norfolk Southern. CSX comes into town from the south by way of Atlanta along their W&A subdivision, which curves around town and alongside the NS to Wauhatchie, CSX's main yard here. There's a yard bypass and a yard lead on the banks of the Tennessee River, which reconnect on the west end of the yard to create the Chattanooga sub to Nashville. On the busier NS side of things, their main line from Atlanta, named the Atlanta North District, joins the C&O and TP main line from Cincinnati on the north side of town at Citico Junction. At this massive junction, all traffic from Atlanta to the south, Knoxville to the east, and Cincinnati to the north funnel into DeButt's Yard, one of the biggest yards in the eastern U.S. From DeButt's yard stems a handful of local belt lines that serve customers all around the town via midnight locals and daylight yard jobs. The main line, however, continues through alongside the CSX to 23rd Street. This junction is where the NS crosses over the CSX via a series of switches and a constant bottleneck for both railroads. From there, NS follows CSX to Wauhatchie, where the AGS North District branches to Birmingham and Irondale, with the rest of traffic hopping onto CSX at Control Point Wauhatchie. From here to Stevenson, Alabama, the two railroads share a mostly double-tracked main line for 32 miles until Stevenson, where CSX bends to the north and Nashville, and NS to the west and Memphis. Our next stop would be CP 23rd Street, where NS would be rolling by with a Birmingham-bound trash train as we'd set up to scope the area and wait on the Tennessee Railroad Museum's Somerville Special. As if the two Class 1 spaghetti trackage wasn't enough, there's two more railroads in the city. On the northeast side of town is the famous Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum, or TVRM for short. This museum runs quite the operation of old passenger equipment, including 2 steam locomotives, while occasionally delivering freight to customers along the East Chattanooga Belt Line. The belt connects to everything at 23rd Street and then continues south into Georgia as the Chattanooga and Chickamauga Railroad, all the way to Somerville, a track of about 50 miles. This short line hosts a daily freight and TVRM's Somerville Steam Excursions, which is what would be lined shortly at 23rd Street, with Southern 4501 in charge this Thursday morning. This Somerville special is normally an occasional weekend run, yet this Thursday it would be making a trip south in some great morning light, specifically for the National Model Railroad Association, or NMRA for short. The convention this week would last for an entire 7 days in Chattanooga and make its way to real-life trains with this ride along the Chattanooga and Chickamauga line. With this info, Andrew and I would set up with many others trackside as the steam special would round the curve from TVRM trackage and onto the CNC. Led by Southern 4501 in its Virginia green and gold passenger livery, TVRM runs these specials with a string of vintage restored passenger cars from a plethora of railroads. It's quite the sight to see behind such a historic locomotive, one that we'd chase south a ways, coming into the quaint hamlet of Rossville, Georgia next. Named after the Cherokee tribe's final chief before the Trail of Tears, John Ross's town, known as Rossville, resides just a stone throw away from southern Chattanooga. Famous for the Peerless woolen mill located adjacent to the railroad in the center of town, this old mill once supplied uniforms and blankets for American soldiers during both World Wars, yet shut its doors in the mid-20th century. It currently sits as the area's next restoration warehouse project, for now, framing our scenic train quite well under some golden morning sunlight. Built initially by the Chattanooga, Rome, and Columbus Railroad in 1888, the 49-mile short line that we now chase was first constructed to move textiles, coal, iron, and perishable goods from central Georgia to Chattanooga. By 1901, the route was absorbed into the Central of Georgia Railway, who'd operate passenger service over the route until the 1950s, later becoming part of Norfolk Southern before being leased in 1989 to the newly created Chattanooga and Chickamauga Railroad. In 2008, the CNC was unfortunately bought by the Genesee & Wyoming, operating with the company's mundane orange and yellow scheme ever since. Alas, the scenery is an aspect that the G&W has yet to ruin, as we'd find the train navigating through Chickamauga Battlefield State Park, just south of its namesake town. From Chickamauga, it would be a leap on US 27 to Rock Spring, where a photo line was building for the S-curve shot of Southern 4501, the 282 Mikado, built by Baldwin Locomotive Works in 1911 for the Southern Railway. Restored in 1964, it was saved that same year and has been hauling passengers around Chattanooga ever since. We'd hear the passenger train meeting the daily freight turn south of town, so that's where we'd go next. Setting up with plenty of time, Andrew and I would pick a wide open shot for our final run by, the shot being fabulous, until the oblivious fellow in the Navy truck rolled into frame about a minute in front of the train. No biggie, really, an inconvenience perhaps, but mostly a testament to some people's incompetence. When chasing a train with other people, and especially other photographers, don't be that guy. We'd be treated well on the CNC today, as a couple crossings north would be the daily freight turn, switching a large plastics manufacturer next to Noble Church of God. Quite the interesting scene this morning, as after a couple moves to rebuild their train, the CNC northbound turn would be off to their next customer on the line in Rock Spring. We'd set up one more time for a slow run by right next to Georgia Northwestern's Technical College, where the short line would trundle by. From here, we'd bid the Chattooga and Chickamauga farewell and head back up to Chattanooga and the northeast side of town to the entrance of DeButt's Yard and southbound curve that bends CSX into town. It's no secret anymore that Coffey's Cliff is a fantastic railfan spot, and it would live up to the hype for me and Andrew. This is the north entrance to Norfolk Southern's beehive that is DeButt's Yard in Chattanooga, seeing freight from all over the southeast as three major NS lines converge. Looking north is Citico Junction, where the Cincinnati-bound C&O and TP main line welcomes the Atlanta North District, which combines with the Knoxville District to northeastern Tennessee just down the line. When we'd arrive, CSX would be quiet, as a Sperry inspection car would have the main line for a few more minutes, with NS giving us plenty of action, however. Yard jobs with old EMDs are a common sight, pulling plenty of cars out of the yard as they build trains and take arrivals apart, which come into view, it seems, every few minutes. CSX would finally show up along the northern end of their W&A main line with I-155, an intermodal train from Fairburn, just outside of Atlanta, to Memphis. Minutes away from Coffey's Cliff is the TVRM, who'd show up with a similar train that I rode almost 15 years ago. So when we'd see it through the trees, we'd chase it down, albeit backlit and harshly shaded. From here, we'd head back to downtown and the convention center to help set up the remainder of our layout duties, returning to the tracks on the west side of town past Wauhatchie. We're just a couple miles west of CP Wildwood, where the yard lead joins the main line to Stevenson, which makes up that 32-mile line that CSX shares with NS. A railfan favorite on the scenic stretch of joint trackage is the evening's daily local, L461. Unlike Tampa locals now, this job almost always showcases some vintage, unrebuilt standard E&D power. Today being no exception, as 3 Jeep locomotives would round the curve out of town with a solid train for Bridgeport and Widows Creek to our west. Chasing down this job isn't terribly hard, but it's not awfully easy either, as we'd follow the tracks up to CP James, where the double track from Wauhatchie ends and singles up to parallel the infamous Nickajack Lake. To the west of the lake is CP Allerton, where the double track resumes towards Bridgeport and where the Sequatchie Valley Railroad stages an MP-15 for switching purposes at Colonial Chemical just down the line. As you continue west from Allerton, the double track ends at CP Hale, which is just before the Bridgeport Lift Bridge, a single track structure that's been here for decades. To understand the nature of this bridge and surrounding area, you have to go back to 1950, when TVA began construction of a massive power plant just south and west of Bridgeport along the Tennessee River, named Widows Creek. At its peak, the 8 turbo generator units that burned about 10,000 tons of coal a day could produce 9 billion kilowatt hours of electricity annually. This place powered entire counties and could be seen from almost anywhere thanks to its 1,001-foot tall chimney stack that would disperse emissions high above the surrounding town. It all came to an end, though, in 2015 when TVA shuttered the plant after slowly turning away from coal thanks to EPA regulations and an uptight local government brainwashed by the time's Go Green movements. CSX's large 10-track yard was deemed useless save for the paper mill at the end of the coal plant spur that's still served today by this L461, hence all the boxcar traffic. This plant would receive plenty of coal via rail, but also by barge, which is where this lift bridge in Bridgeport comes into play. When the plant was opened in the middle of the 20th century, the surrounding waters of the Tennessee River were deemed unsafely shallow for huge coal barges to navigate. So a dredging project began to create a bypass for barges to take, hence the Bridgeport Bar that the railroad lift bridge spans today. Now, there's no need for a lift or a swing bridge over the river, as barges rarely come by after 2015's closure of the plant and the demolition of it all in 2020. Yet these rails still carry plenty of local business like L461, now crossing into Bridgeport via the new bridge constructed in 1997. The local would stop here to work interchange traffic with the Sequatchie Valley Railroad in downtown, as we'd skip over to the west side of things to catch the departure. Final stop of the evening for us would be the entrance to the Widows Creek branch that breaks off the main line as a Y, guarded by an original searchlight fixed approach signal. It would make for an interesting spot this evening, as L461 would stop and line the switch as they back into the spur to drop their cars just behind us. Now, normally 461 continues all the way down the spur a few miles to switch the paper mill, but tonight they drop their cars in place and head out. Either they spotted these for tomorrow's local, or an engine from the paper mill would come here to pick them up. Either way, it'd be twilight in a forest next to an abandoned power plant named Widow's Creek. So we'd pack up our stuff and head out.
Very corrosive.
Next day, we're out and about by mid-morning as Andrew and I would have to start making our way back south to Atlanta for a night of baseball at Truist Park. So we'd follow the tracks and catch a couple things on the way out. Back to Coffey's Cliff we'd venture, where a small crowd would be building, mostly gentlemen from the convention downtown, and a couple locals also here to watch a busy Friday morning at the yard. Upon arrival, there'd be 3 trains in the picture, a couple building out of DeButt's yard and one arriving, the latter being of peak interest for its power and commodity, BNSF coal returning from Georgia Power's Plant Schurer to Memphis. This is NS empty coal train number 733, coming back north for another load of coal and passing another outbound mixed freight, this one having NS 8183 in the second position. A sharp mix of business and executive paint for Norfolk Southern, honoring their terminals and presence in Chicago. To the left of the coal train is NS 126, a Chattanooga to Roanoke train that works Knoxville on its way, normally a massive train, and today actually being too big. With the head end all the way north of Citico Junction, the engineer would ask for another engine to be added to the consist, which would be delivered shortly after our coal drag would be in the clear, in the form of NS 8080, coming to the rescue. CSX would soon get in on the action, as a promise of a train with the nearby green signal would be made good as C306 rounds the bend out of town and down the W&A. Hailing from Evansville, this loaded coal train is bound for Plant Bowen, just west of Cartersville, along the W&A, meeting a couple trains on its way south this morning. By the time C306 would clear up, so would our oversized train, which would allow NS 122 to begin their work, with the Pennsylvania Heritage Unit planned to lead the train. I rarely catch NS units like this, so it'd be a treat for us to film this burgundy and gold wide cab as they'd begin building a long string of commerce for Decatur, Illinois.
It's a beautiful locomotive.
During all of this, yard switchers would continue their duties, and NS 168 would depart for St. Louis, another huge one out of DeButt that would barely get out of the yard before CSX would come around the corner, with local L807 returning from a morning working customers east of town along the Tyner branch. Things would be hopping now, as NS 122 with that Pennsy logo would start pulling and southbound 289 would appear from the north. Our busy 90 minutes at Coffey's Cliff would soon wrap up as we'd start making our way south to Cartersville, stopping one more time at Adairsville along the WNA. This time it would be for lunch, an antique shop, and G440, empty grain out of Bolivar on the Etowah sub, returning north for another load. Next day, we'd be back at the train show for the main Saturday event, starting off with Paul's layout that, with its detail and exemplary modeling, would win first place this year. Truly no surprises there. For the rest of the time, however, we'd be exploring the many layouts and vendors, so I'll let the footage do the talking for the moment to show just how big and splendid this convention really is for the model railroader.
This is like Midwest stuff. It's like both.
Yes.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Where is it supposed to be based on?
We're based out of Corpus Christi, Texas. There's California over there. There's a gentleman out
Incredible.
Spencer and Larry Smoke's gonna run all horror filming on this.
We're hoping.
Hi.
After the show, Andrew and I would roll out back trackside for an evening with some friends at Nickajack Lake. What a time would be had with Alex, Wyatt, and John. You guys made this night way too fun and also got to witness a piece of heaven on earth in this evening's sunset. Little things like this make it easy to believe for me that there's a higher power looking after us who created scenes like this and gave us the creativity to describe it to others. It's also a gift to those who say, how can you believe yet not see? How can you not believe when views like this exist?
Okay, that's not going in the God section.
The sun would illuminate one more train this evening as E305 would show up from Chattanooga, sprinting west to Stevenson, and then points north along the Chattanooga sub. Finally, after a dark shower, we get one last NS train, a short freight to end the night, before our last day at the show. It's now Sunday evening, and after a complete weekend at the convention center, Andrew and I would get back outside for a couple more hours prior to sunset to see what we could find. We'd drive straight to the joint line just west of Wauhatchie around Wildwood, where a few trains were expected, like this M515 with freight for Waycross. 15 minutes later, and it's NS's turn with train Z380, CSX's resembling of the Manifest train from here to Stevenson. They'd be battling the grade here, giving the two GE wide cabs a chance to show off their combined 8,000 plus horsepower. Meeting this train up the line by just a couple miles would be CSX's highest priority train, IO25. Intermodal from Chicago to Jacksonville, today with some auto racks up front and a huge train coming into Chattanooga for a crew change. This IO25 would be slowing for a crew change that'll run overnight all the way south down to WNA and past Atlanta to Manchester, where tomorrow morning's Jacksonville crew will step aboard. It's pretty wild how much CSX does to keep this train on time, but it's understandable with the amount of freight and tonight's UPS piggyback traffic behind the lead motors. We'd follow the IO25 back to Wauhatchie, setting up again quickly to catch the train blast off from their crew change. Yet NS would show up first with train 61C, an as-needed empty gondola train from Calvert, Alabama to Indiana. Calvert, located just north of Mobile in southern Alabama, hosts one giant joint steel plant on the east side of town that receives unit trains of steel from points north. This is the empty backhaul, returning to Indiana Harbor for another load, presumably off of a barge from Canada. Soon after, here'd come IO25, all crewed up and rolling within minutes, now just 2 shifts away from the end of their route in Jacksonville. Our final morning would start eventful, waking up quite early and driving south out of Chattanooga to the WNA, the route of M582, who this morning have quite the set of engines. We'd race to Dalton, a sleepy North Georgia town that hosts the WNA for CSX and the Atlanta North District for NS, crossing on the east side of town in a maze of tracks and 2 diamonds. When we'd walk up the Gordon Street overpass for our shot, an NS maintenance crew would be gathering up old cross ties into gondolas as our M582 would be lined up behind us. In just a couple moments, here'd come the train, with CSX's brand new America 250 units up front. We get back in the car and head north along the WNA to the next signal north at Tunnel Hill, where the town takes its name from the old railroad tunnel that's still in service, which guides trains like our M582 west towards Ringgold, where they'll turn north by west towards Chattanooga. Painted to honor America's 250th anniversary, these two engines, the 250 and the 2026, are the sharpest on the system, and were a no doubt bag for me and Andrew, so to Ringgold we'd go for one last shot. This is where we'd film our final train and where a fantastic week in Chattanooga would wrap up. What a blast it was to see and meet so many people, catch so many cool moves, and of course, see all the models in motion at the convention. Thanks to everyone who came out, and to those who chose to tag along, I'm already planning my next visit up here to see y'all again. But until we meet again, this is Christian from Multicolor Films, end of transmission.